Hello, Year 11. I'm back with another one of my little revision videos, okay? I'm going to stress once again, there is no new information here, all right? This is the same information you've already received, that you already know. Simply putting this together just to give you a little bit of a confidence boost, just to reiterate it, and just to remind you of anything that you might not be fully sure of before the exam. So, reminder, your exam is an hour and a half, but you do have your extra time if you're eligible for it. It's worth 25% of your final grade, and you must answer 2 questions. Now, we've only done one of the texts here, so you will be answering on Oedipus the King. You will answer 1 question from section A, which is the extract question, and you will answer 1 question from section B, which is the general essay question, and that's more looking at the whole text. The approach is very, very important, as we know, and we should be pretty good at this now because we've gone through this many times, but I'll just remind you of a few things. So first of all, you need to read the question very, very carefully, okay? When you're looking at the extract, section A, you need to make sure that you understand where in the play that happens, okay? So is it the very beginning? Is it in the middle? Is it the climax? Is it sort of in the fall in action? Or is it at the end in the resolution? Must underline keywords, very, very, very important. If you don't answer the question fully, that's going to hurt your final response. It's very important that we underline those keywords and make sure we're really answering that question. Planning time, I would give you 5 minutes for each question. So only about 10 minutes. You have to work really, really quickly in this exam. And that's what makes the exam so difficult, is just the lack of time. So if you've got extra time, that's great. If not, you're going to have to work super, super quick. What have you got time for in your 10 minutes? Well, you've got time to work out your points, your 3 points that you're going to use to answer it. And you've got time to think about quotations as well, highlighting just a couple on the extract, but also thinking about your own evidence that you can use for section B, because obviously you're not allowed to take your book into the exam. So you're going to need a thesis statement, and that's you generally answering the question. Now, you don't need to do a lengthy introduction. A few sentences that just answer the question and respond to it clearly are absolutely sufficient. The exam board said that they don't want overly long introductions, and they don't want generalized introductions. They just want very clear answer to the question in your own words. Then the thing that's really important is the 3 P paragraphs, the 3 analytical paragraphs, okay? Make sure your points answer the question. Don't overcomplicate them. Just give a solid, thorough answer with some good evidence and some solid analysis, and you'll be absolutely fine. You've got about 40 minutes per essay response, so there's very little time here. You have to work super, super quick, which is why I've put at the bottom, you do not have time to daydream. So you have to work really, really intense, probably one of the most intense exams that you will sit, purely because this should be, I think, a 2-hour exam. Each paragraph of the essay should include evidence, of course, well-selected evidence, and remember the rules for evidence selection. It should prove your point, it should be a sensible length, and it should have nice techniques that you can analyze. And when we're analyzing, again, we should know this, but these are the things we do when we analyze. We identify the techniques that are being used. We talk about the impact of those techniques or of keywords, and we say how they relate to the character or the theme or the context or tragedy as a genre. We think about the impact of the audience. And remember, you can look at keywords as well, okay, and their connotations. And also you look at the author's purpose. What is it that Sophocles is trying to do here? And you need to think about the audience and the author's purpose in every analytical paragraph. Finally, make sure you switch to section B with sufficient time to answer it. So halfway through the exam, 45 minutes into the exam, or about 50 minutes, 55 minutes if you've got extra time, about 50 minutes into the exam, you must make sure that you switch questions, okay? Otherwise, you're not going to finish. It's much, much more important to finish rather than trying to do a fancy conclusion or overthinking your response or over-editing it if you don't actually finish. So save your editing for the end. It is important to edit, of course it is, but it's more important to actually get your answer down and finished. So you have to work super, super quick. This is why preparing by learning the text, making sure you've got really good quotes, making sure you understand the characters, the key themes, and making sure that you've got really good evidence that you can just pick it really quickly straight off the top of the head. Just so you know, you are assessed out of 25, okay, and you're looked at for each question, so the entire exam's out of 50, and you are assessed on your personal response to the question. So how well can you answer the question? How well do you know the text, your knowledge of the text, how well you can analyze the text, your understanding of characters, their relationships together and how they relate to key themes, and also how well do you understand what it is Sophocles is doing in tragedy. I've then included on the PowerPoint, I'm not going to read it out for you, but you can go through this. We've gone through this in class before. Some advice from the exam board about good answers to section A and good answers to section B. Okay, so there's a few examples there. I've got an example of a very, 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 very long, actually, response, probably a little too long, but a good response essay. And just look at how they use these short embedded quotations, and they're always analysing. This one is about A Doll's House, which I know you guys know. There's some examples of some typical questions that you could be asked, and also some general things to consider. All right. Now, here are a few things that you can be looking at. You need to think about the setting of the extract. Where does it appear in the whole of the tragedy? What time is it? Which characters are in it? But also, how is it linked to tragedy? Is this part of the exposition? Is it part of the rise in action? Is it part of the climax, the fall in action, the resolution, or the denouement? Think about the characters, but also the relationships, how they interact with each other, and any conflicts that might be there between them. Does this scene represent a turning point or a shift for any of the characters in the scene? Think about the action as well. What's happening in this scene? What's occurring in terms of the plot? Is that relevant? Be careful not to talk about the whole play in section A. Remember, we're just talking about that scene, but you can say why that scene's important in terms of the whole thing. And very importantly, think about the style. Think about literary devices. Think about techniques. Think about language. Think about imagery, symbols, irony, foils. We spent a lot of time analysing these things in class. And then think about the key themes. I've also shared a document with you which has quite a bit of writing on each of the 4 major themes that we've looked at. So that should also give you some really good sort of pointers of things that you can bring up and talk about where they're relevant in the exam. How are those themes being conveyed? Think about how it refers to the key themes. And think about the impact on the audience. What does the audience gain from this? And how do they have a better understanding of the key ideas? So that's section A. When we get to section B, much more challenging because we don't have a text in front of us to base our answer on. You just simply get a question. And as we practiced in class, planning is super, super important for this. You need to think about the question carefully. You need to, of course, underline keywords in the question, and then start thinking about how you're going to answer it. And then you're going to come up with your 3 points as you would normally do for any essay. You need to make sure those 3 points really cover that question. So, just looking at this here very quickly, we can see some of the pitfalls that students fall into with section B. They don't leave enough time for the question. They don't plan it. They don't use many quotations. They don't use relevant quotations. They don't analyze them. They don't answer the question. They don't offer a personal view. And they don't focus on elements that are relevant to the question. So really, the most important thing here is answering the question and coming up with good examples from the text to answer that. This is where revision is super important. You've got excellent resources. We've got character profiles. We've got notes on themes. We've got summary, and we've got key quotations. That should be enough for you to revise good quotes. And remember, if you cannot remember a quote exactly, do not worry. Just put it down approximately. You can also describe a scene. That also counts as evidence. It doesn't have to be a quote every single time. So don't be scared in the exam to put a quote in if you can't exactly remember the wording. As long as it's close and you're not just making it up, it's absolutely fine. I've given 3 more section B questions that you can use to plan and practice. Think about underlining the keywords and what your 3 points would be. So one of the ones you can look at here is explore the way Sophocles presents the character of Jocasta in the play Oedipus the King. How does Sophocles make the audience feel pity for Oedipus in the play Oedipus the King? And what is the significance of prophecies in the play Oedipus the King? You can have a go at some of these for practice. And of course, as always, if you send any of these to me, I will give you some feedback before the thing. Remember, planning for section B is really important. Basic thing that you must do is underline keywords in the question, formulate your 3 points that answer the question. Remember, points should talk about what the text does. It should not just simply be about techniques. Consider 3 pieces of relevant evidence that you can use for your paragraphs, and then write your 3P paragraphs for each, for the full essay. Okay, so you've got some things there to help you revise. You've got a lot of revision documents. You should have a good range of quotations. You should have a summary of it. You should have character profiles. And there's a lot of good online resources that I've shared with you as well that you can use. So you should have everything you need. If in the next day or so you want to get to me a practice question, please do, and I'll give you some feedback on that, okay? That's everything. All the best, and take care.